At the very start of Chapter 1, there is a sign near the blue hand door that reads Stairway to Hell. At the time, it feels like a dark joke, a bit of factory humor. But after 5 chapters, that sign reads less like a joke and more like a warning someone forgot to take down. Because the deeper you go into Playtime Company, the more obvious it becomes that calling this place a factory is like calling the ocean a puddle. So let's actually track it, floor by floor, chapter by chapter, and figure out just how far down this thing goes. The assumption used here is that each floor of an industrial building measures roughly 5 meters. Starting from the surface, the exterior of Playtime Co. is a massive building surrounded by forest, which we know from the red gas hallucinations in Chapter 3 and from the VHS tape showing Huggy Wuggy escaping through a loading dock that opens directly into trees. That is basically all we ever see of the outside. Everything else happens underground. Chapter 1 starts at surface level with the entrance hall and the Make-a-Friend room. The chase with Huggy Wuggy sends you through ventilation shafts and down approximately 6 more floors, counting the box drop. By the time you reach the flower and rescue Poppy at the end of the chapter, you are already about 7 floors below ground, roughly 35 meters. Not alarming yet, but the sign is starting to make more sense. Chapter 2 is where things start accelerating. The chapter begins close to the same depth as the end of Chapter 1, but then Mommy Longlegs grabs Poppy and you drop through a slide that sends you approximately 8 floors into the game station. And the game station deserves a moment here because it contains a fully functional train system. A factory so large that it needs internal rail transport is not a factory in any normal sense of the word. The areas beneath the station, including the molding room, musical memory, Whack-a-Wuggy, and the statues section, extend the footprint considerably without adding much depth. Then, the train crash sequence drops roughly 18 more floors before the wreck near Playcare's entrance. By the end of Chapter 2, you are sitting at around 165 meters underground. Chapter 3 is where the scale becomes genuinely hard to process. After the trash compactor and the mini train station, you board Elliot's Express, a cable car that descends approximately 15 more floors into Playcare. And Playcare is built inside a cave, not a room, not a section of the factory, an actual enormous natural cavern that was excavated, reinforced, and then filled with an artificial sky, fake grass, ponds, murals, and multiple multi-story buildings whose interiors are vastly larger than their exteriors suggest. Home Sweet Home alone houses over 150 children across 2 floors of dormitories, kitchens, and medical areas. The school below it has its own industrial turbine. The lighting is entirely artificial, which becomes obvious the moment the power cuts out. By the time you reach the end of Chapter 3 and take the elevator down another 17 floors to the toy dump and the prison entrance, you are sitting at approximately 310 meters below the surface. That is roughly 3 times the height of the Statue of Liberty, measured downward. Chapter 4 keeps going. From the prison, you descend through cave systems, past the no man's land power plant, through cryogenic storage, secondary surgical labs, and eventually to Dr. Sawyer's server chamber, adding another 20 floors or so across the chapter. The cavern systems here feel deliberately unfinished, which makes sense given that Playtime Company was still actively expanding when everything collapsed. By Safe Haven, the refuge where surviving experiments hid during the Toy Wars, you are roughly 70 floors underground. I find it genuinely hard to imagine voluntarily working in a cave at 350 meters below ground, but apparently that was just Tuesday for Playtime Co employees. Then, Chapter 5 does something that reframes everything that came before it. Early in the chapter, while escaping through ventilation shafts after the second Huggy Wuggy chase, you fall through a series of drops and land in a section with windows looking out into a cave. Through those windows, you can see a cavern so large that it contains what can only be described as a city. There are structures down there that look like houses, or possibly hangars, arranged across the cave floor in a way that suggests deliberate planning. Chapter 5 also reaches the deepest confirmed point in the series so far, a 9-floor elevator drop during the Huggy chase that leads to the boiler room and Giblet's refuge. From there, the chapter climbs back up through the conditioning labs, through Sweet Street, and into the final sequence against the prototype in a server room that somehow still has power despite being nearly half a kilometer below ground. The question of how the electricity still works down here is one I choose not to think about too hard. The net depth by the final confrontation places you at approximately 450 meters underground. To put that number in context, 450 meters is deeper than the deepest point of the Channel Tunnel between England and France. The underground portion of Playtime Company covers an estimated area roughly equivalent to twice the size of Disneyland in California. Construction costs across everything visible in 5 chapters have been estimated at over $450 million, and that figure almost certainly undercounts the areas that appear only briefly in the background or that we never visit at all. What sticks with me most about all of this is not the depth or the price tag. It is the fact that the sign was right there at the beginning. Stairway to Hell. Whoever put it up knew exactly what was below them, and they left it hanging at the entrance anyway. Probably because the elevator was faster. Playtime Co. is not a factory with something dark underneath it. It is an iceberg, and we spent 4 chapters on the surface before Chapter 5 showed us the underground city in the cave and made it clear that we still do not know where the bottom actually is.